Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast. Others are joining us on Facebook and Twitter. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Collins, your host this evening. Kelly Crossley is off. Tonight, entrepreneurs of color and resilience during COVID. We, like you, are dealing with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic and are taking precautions. We are working with a limited staff, and our guests are joining us remotely. It's been a year since the start of the pandemic, altering our lives in so many ways. Small businesses, especially businesses owned by people of color, have been hit and hit hard. Several businesses closed their doors for good, and others are trying to meet COVID safety guidelines with maintaining their staff and customers. At least 41% of businesses of color closed during the crisis. Many companies that stayed open had to pivot or alter their way of doing business. We wanted to bring a group of small business owners together, some that have been here before, to discuss the challenges, insights, and what has kept them going and what has kept their businesses going and moving ahead during this deadly pandemic. Also, what advice they can give to other business owners and entrepreneurs of color to survive and thrive. Joining us tonight, Kobe Evans, owner and founder of Pure Oasis in Dorchester. Pure Oasis is the first recreational marijuana dispensary in Boston and the first black-owned cannabis shop in Massachusetts. Cheryl Strotter, lead chef and co-owner of Soleil Restaurant, located in the Bruce Bowling Municipal Building in Roxbury. TJ Douglas, co-owner of the Urban Grape Wine Store in Boston with his wife. He is also the co-author of Drink Progressively, From White to Red, Light to Full-Bodied, a bold new way to pair wine and food. And finally, Nia Grace, owner and operator of Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen Restaurant in Roxbury. Guests, we welcome you all. What a tough, crazy, bizarre time it has been over the last year, especially for business owners, especially for business owners of color. Let's start with you, TJ, because your business is a little unique to some of the others on the panel, as you've been in the space for a decade. And you have, as I mentioned at the top of the show, thrived. How were you able to manage through this pandemic, and what has kept you going, and in some cases has increased your business?
Yeah, well, Chris, it's nice to see you again, and it's so happy to be back on Basic Black, and nice to see everyone here. Yeah, we've been very lucky. You know, we are now in our second decade. We're an 11-year-old company. And, you know, when the pandemic hit in March, we really had to, you know, take that 1 week of pivoting and just really get out of the pivot factor and get into reimagining what our company is and what it can be. You know, what really helped us was that first push of PPP. We have a great relationship with our bank, so they helped us guide us through that, you know, that crazy, scary, you know, paperwork, and that allowed us to keep our staff on, increase pay, bring on some more out of work people to give them full-time jobs. And then that also allowed us to really meet our customers where they were, as opposed to trying to get them to come here, especially, you know, during lockdown. So it was helpful that we had the logistics in place of delivery, website. But, you know, even to today, our doors are still closed by choice to the public. It's only delivery and pickup. So we're very lucky in that sense.
So I know many of you have pivot, but let's move to, you know, the aforementioned PPP loans, which were certainly super challenging for business owners who had been in the space for, like TJ, a decade and more. So someone like yourself, Cheryl, who's new to the area and to the entrepreneurship of being a black-owned business and maybe not having the relationship with the bank that someone like TJ, who's been in the space for 10 years, how challenging was that to kind of cultivate that relationship where you could get what was needed?
I've been in the business for about 20 years, so I had a little bit of a challenge. Not much, because I also had a wonderful relationship with my banker, and that's critical to get through the forms. My first restaurant was Keith's Place in Grove Hall. I was there for 10 years, and I am a newbie to the industry again, in that I've resurfaced as Soleil, and we've been here for 2.5 years. But it is critical to have networks and a good banker, a good accountant, so that you can file through all of this paperwork.
So I'm interested to hear from you, Kobe, because you're not just somewhat new as far as your business, but the industry is brand new. So that had to play a factor when you were looking for, the loans and some type of support, because the industry is so new and there is so much unknown in the cannabis space.
Yeah, so we're in a different predicament based on the fact that we are deemed illegal on the federal level, so there are no loans available to us. So it's a double-edged sword. One is that there's no loans available to us, but we're a new business in a mature industry, if you will. So the first day that we opened, we had a customer base, and so we've had a consistent customer base for the last year, and that has kind of kept us afloat, if you will. So the last year has been interesting based on the fact that we were forced to close for 2 months. And then from there, in those 2 months, we did a deep dive and kind of, not reinvented our business, but really took stock of what we were doing and made improvements to our processes so that when we opened back up in May, the business was better than it was before it closed. And so the last year has been pretty interesting, and we are in a unique situation, because like the liquor industry, our industry kind of got a boost from the pandemic in as much as people needed some sort of therapy, if you will, to help as a coping mechanism.
Nia, I know you were pretty early to pivot. You didn't have a whole lot of time to pivot, but I know you pivoted and pivoted effectively because, you're still standing. And I know you got into Daryl's Corner Bar probably at a tough time because, you're new to it, and then boom, you hit with the pandemic. So you were forced to make some pretty brash decisions quickly. How did that factor in, and how did that go for you?
Absolutely. When I think about how 20% of small businesses fail within the first year, and 8 out of 10 of those Black-owned businesses fail within the first 18 months. When the pandemic hit, we was at month 18 for our business. We thought that, we were actually going to have a pretty good year, growth from the previous year. And for us, it just was a matter of, well, what am I going to do? And understanding those statistics, it was a matter of, I've got at least 46 different households that depend on us, an entire community that looks to us. And so we didn't really have time to pause to do a really long elaboration of what we were going to do next. We just had to take the next option, and that was doing takeout for us. I would say for 8 months out of the last 12, we operated with takeout only. And that is what we've been able to do to, in fact, save some of the livelihoods of our staff, as well as, save the legacy that Daryl's is to the community in the city of Boston.
Nia, last year on Basic Black, you spoke about your business shutting down due to COVID and changing your business model. Let's take a look at what you had to say back in May.
Once we had to shut down, in fact, takeout was less than 2% of our income. It was more something that was passive for us. So we had to really regroup. When we talk about doing things quickly, it was that Monday that we found out that we would have to close our dining rooms that Tuesday. And I had to make a decision if we were going to be open for takeout by that weekend. I did it, and we've been doing takeout ever since.
So as you look back, you acted quickly, you made a decision, you jumped. Do you feel like it was the right call or the only call?
Truthfully, it was the only call. Unlike the marijuana industry, and even for liquor stores or retail liquor outlets, we weren't able to sell alcohol in the beginning. That was something that legislation that got passed down later. And to understand our business, 60% of it was alcohol sales, and that was all done on site. So I talk about the fact that we only had 1% of takeout, for which now takeout, in fact, represents 50% of our business, even when we're doing dine-in. At the end of the day, we chose to close as well. I think about TJ, making sure that our doors will close because we're really trying to protect our staff. And that has also been a good decision, because not only did it protect our staff, but it protected the reserves as well as some of the funding that we were able to get so that we could be here today and have a good spring or summer to look forward to.
Interesting. You mentioned that you were not able to sell alcohol obviously TJ sells alcohol. And TJ, I know it was interesting and good for you because I know grocery markets, some of them sell alcohol, so they couldn't take that license and say you can only sell alcohol in a grocery store, so they had to open it up to everybody. So it put you in a position where you could stay open, but still you had to make necessary accommodations for your staff. I know at one point you were open to the public to actually physically walk in, but you had to shut that down, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're at the mercy of the Massachusetts government. And, like you said, Chris, like we have the same, and, for those of us here in Massachusetts, a liquor store license is actually a package store license, right? We're packies no matter how nice we are. And so the package store license that Urban Grape has is also the same package store license that like Whole Foods has that sells alcohol. And because the government couldn't, or it's illegal to shut down part of a liquor license, all wine stores and spirit shops around Massachusetts were able to stay open. We were so lucky in that because I don't know what we would have done, even though we've been in the business for 10 years, just like Mia, we probably have 16 households, including my own, that live off of selling Cabernet and Pinot Grigio. What we've done, as I mentioned, we've been closed to the public by choice for the last year. The first couple of weeks, we tried staying open and having customers, socially distance and wear gloves and sanitize and mask, but people were bringing their babies and their dogs in and touching bottles. And it wasn't a safe practice. And there was no way for us to, have tables 6 far apart. So what we've done, the staff has always been masked. We stopped doing indoor tastings for my staff on tasting wine. I do everything at home now. And then we built this amazing wine counter outside so we can still give the Urban Grape sense of hospitality and service, but have our customers stay outside behind plexiglass, masked. We have a doorbell. We'll bring stuff to your car. But really, like the delivery, it allowed people to buy from us and get delivery right to their home. And also changing up our website to, you've been to the store before, Chris. We sell on this progressive scale, and then we changed and pivoted what our website was to give more of a reflection of what it is when you come inside the store. And it was hard. There was some pushback from the community, very few, but as much pushback that there was 10 times support, which kept us going. And as you said, like we've actually done better this year than we have in previous years because we sell wine and we were able to kind of maneuver within this pandemic.
There's so much that goes into being kept going. And, for an older business that typically might have some capital reserve and really have bookkeeping and a lot of structure in place, accountants, a lot of business owners that I talk to that have had, second and third generation businesses typically have all this in place. For a black-owned business that probably isn't nearly as deep entrenched in the community and doesn't have quite the reserves, it becomes pretty much a significant challenge. Cheryl, could you speak on trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to just really stay afloat without maybe the necessary capital that someone else may have?
Mm-hmm. So the good thing about Soleil is that I've been in business for a number of years. So in terms of capital, like several other businesses, we applied for the PPP and various loans and grants that were offered at the federal and state level. And many of us know that the first iteration went to places like Shake Shack, Morton Steakhouse, things like that. But we were fortunate in that we received the PPP. We got a number of different grants as well. So it helps sustain my staff. Like the other businesses here, I'm responsible for other households. And what we did to slightly pivot was increase our catering, which became very interesting. We started catering to the hospitals. We partnered with a couple of entities that were feeding a lot of the elder population in our community. So our pivot was to feed en masse. We lost a lot of walk-in revenue because we are in the Bruce Bowling building and everybody was working from home. So we had to change our structure. Literally, our our delivery is probably 10% of our revenue. And our catering is what grew during the COVID times. And that is what is really carrying us now.
Interesting that you said that the Mortons, the Shake Shacks were the first to receive the funding. Now, were there not some initiatives put in place that were supposed to go into urban areas and get those of color, those brown and brown businesses, the money first? What happened? What became of that?
Like many plans that come from the federal level down, to the state, there's a plan and then there's reality. And the reality is we were not first on that list, even though there was a conversation about what was going to happen in the communities of color and, all of this effort that was in the media that, we're going to help small businesses. We're going to help Black and Latina businesses. And the reality was that we received help, but we weren't first in line. Right. Perseverance was critical during the time of COVID, and follow up and follow through, social capital, reaching out to people who really understood the need that we had in order to stay in business was centered around funding.
Nia, I know you have been an amazing marketer and someone who has been able to get your business and get it out there so people recognize it and realize that it's now doing takeout. How important was networking and kind of growing your base as far as whether it be marketing, social media, and just good old-fashioned networking to the success of you surviving during COVID?
I think about, somebody asked me what is, what do I need? Like, what does a business need during this period? And we talk about the funding as an obvious source. But when we talk about community support, that is like literally all we have really needed, a lot of us, to even get to this point. And community support is not always financial. Sometimes it's just a good word. Sometimes it's a shared message. Sometimes it's a referral. And I would say that, having had a good foundation for our marketing platform, as well as good relations in the community, have been instrumental in keeping us, on people's radar. But something that we strive to do, and this is through even the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition, is the art of collaboration. The art of collaboration for us has allowed us to really put more than just our own personal businesses on this platform to be heard and seen and patroned. But it's allowed the economy, our ecosystem, our small Black business community to do that. And I know that I've seen partnerships like with my friends over at Meta as well as Urban Grape. Those are the kind of things that, if we can't do it on our own, we have to do this collaboration together. And I would say that has been one of our strongest assets and tools throughout this time.
Which is great to hear, because it sometimes, it takes a village to, uplift everybody. And, as a community, that doesn't always happen. So it's nice to see that that's happening now. Kobe, I'm interested to hear from you. Last year was kind of the summer of racial reckoning, some civil unrest. And there was a little bit of a wave. And did you ride the wave of those promoting and those who felt compelled to support Black and brown-owned businesses?
Yeah, I think that we all kind of were the benefactors of the racial unrest. Unfortunately, I wish the circumstances were different in that, people didn't necessarily have to die for the country to kind of check themselves. But inevitably, that's what happened. And kind of the result of that was a hypersensitivity around Black-owned businesses. And so collectively, yes, there was more attention paid to businesses like Pure Oasis, like Darrow's, like, the Urban Grape. And so I think collectively we all were, there was a sharper focus put on Black-owned businesses. And so, yeah, we there was a benefit and there was a recognition, and, that translated into dollars, and rightly so. I think that we're in an underserved community, and especially in Massachusetts and in Boston, people of color can easily be seen as invisible. Based on the broader landscape. And so once we were seen and recognized duly so, then yes, we all enjoyed that newfound recognition.
You know, that number just still jumps out, 41% of black and brown businesses failing in the first 18 months, and Asian and Latino communities, pretty similar numbers. What do we do to bring more people that look like you and I into the entrepreneurial space? Because I know it's a scary space, and it hasn't been an especially friendly space, and the numbers say that if you get into the space, you're probably not going to be there for long. So as you know, I look at the four of you, all of you super successful, and not just in the current space, but you've done something previously, so you've withstood the test of time, which is very unusual, hence the reason you're here. TJ, if you had to give somebody some advice on to how to get in it and stay in it, what would that be?
Yeah, well, I think it actually starts, Chris, with being able to see yourself in whatever position that is out there, whatever industry, right? Like, you know, Nia bought Daryl's, one of the staples for many decades in Boston, right? And if you walked in there and you saw people that look like you can actually say, hey, you know what? She did it. She's a restaurant owner. Maybe I can do this. Now, what's the path? And the path is to go in and introduce yourself to Nia, you know, and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Can you give me some advice on how, like, what was your path on here? For people that might already be in a similar industry that they might want to start their own business as, you know, reaching out to BECMA, like the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, you know, there's a great network. There's a lot of support of how to find funding, how to find locations, how to find permitting through whatever industry you're trying to get permitting for. There's great resources there, but you got to go out and ask, because I think what all of us have learned as entrepreneurs is that no one's going to just come up and give you an opportunity, right? You have to make your own path. You have to find your own opportunity, and you have to ride that, and you need to ask for help, and you need to be transparent, you know, and you need to, as much as you ask for help, you need to offer that help for someone who's coming up. So, you know, I don't think it's a definitive, this is what you do to get into business, but I think you use people like us to say, hey, here's an idea. How'd you get to where you are?
Cheryl, I know you have some thoughts on the same question.
For me, I think for years, I was always interested in community engagement. So I went to meetings that were held by the main streets. I went to meetings that were also offered through the city. It's important, like TJ said, you have to put yourself out there. Nobody is going to chase you and say, here's a great opportunity. I saw myself in the business. So I would go to different restaurants and just literally sit either at a table or at a high top so I could watch their staff. You know, I would talk to restaurant owners. You have to actually be not only willing to put yourself out there, you have to be vulnerable to say, hey, you know, maybe I didn't do it the right way. Let me go ask. Mentorship is important. Finding like-minded businesses and organizations to help guide you through, because we're in a very, very tough industry. So I think that networking is critical to the success. And sometimes you're not always successful. Sometimes you might slip and fall, but then you go back and you learn the lesson. And that's what's important.
Sure. It's all about failing forward. And
Yes.
Nia, you took over a historic landmark, Bob the Chef's, which was turned into Daryl's Corner Bar by fraternity brother Daryl Settles, a close friend. And, you know, for you to take on that responsibility, because, you know, something that's been there for so long and certainly has been a point of conversation, a point of discussion, and a meeting point for people of color in the city, there's comes a little bit of pressure with that and a pretty significant burden to keep that going.
It's a great responsibility, and then one that I definitely welcomed. You know, you talk about why you do something and why someone gets started. You definitely have to be passionate about it. And I would say that I was definitely passionate about entertainment, food, and beverage, but more so, my history has been based in community and building communities, and particularly communities of color. And I absolutely have recognized the significance that Daryl's, Bob the Chef, that particular corner in the south end of Roxbury, has played for people of color in the city of Boston, particularly Roxbury as well. And so for me, my excitement to be here has been all around that and continuing that legacy.
I know everybody's excited for a new norm come this summer that hopefully will resemble the old norm, and maybe you can get the patio back open near.
Yes.
Yeah. So I
Absolutely.
I think I speak for everybody that we're awfully proud of the work that you've been able to do in the black community, and you're obviously did not allow yourself to become a statistic, because the statistics are so great and so daunting, and it looks like such a huge mountain to climb, but you're climbing it. And TJ, you've climbed it for a decade, and others have climbed it. And Kobe, wish you the best in this space as this medicinal marijuana and recreational marijuana space just continues to take off. So all great things, all good stuff. We appreciate the conversation. We wrap it up on our broadcast, but we're not done just yet. We'll continue the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. So we look forward to seeing you there. Have a great night. Always a great time here on Basic Black.